Your Majesties, Royal Highness, honorable members of the Norwegian Noble Committee, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have a purpose here today. It is a purpose I have tried to serve for many years. I have prayed that God would show me a way to accomplish it. Sometimes, without warning, the future knocks on our door with a precious and painful vision of what might be. 190 years ago, a wealthy inventor read his own obituary, mistakenly published years before his death. Wrongly believing the inventor had just died, a newspaper printed a harsh judgment of his life's work, unfairly labeling him the merchant of death because of his invention, dynamite. Shaken by his condemnation, the inventor made a fateful choice to serve the cause of peace. 7 years later, Alfred Nobel created this prize and the other that bear his name. 7 years ago, tomorrow, I read my own political obituary in the judgment that seemed to be harsh and mistaken, if not premature. But that unwelcome verdict also brought a precious, if painful gift, an opportunity to search for fresh new ways to serve my purpose. Unexpectedly, the quest has brought me here. Even though I fear my words cannot match this moment, I pray that I am here. The quest has brought me here. Even though I fear my words cannot match this moment, I pray that I am feeling in my heart will be communicated. Scientists with whom it is the greatest honor of my life to share this award have laid before us a choice between two different futures. A choice that to my ears echoes the word of an ancient prophet, let life or death, blessings or curses. Therefore, chosen life that both thou and thy seed may live. We, the human species, are in a planetary emergency, a threat to the survival of the civilization that is gathering omniscience and destructive potential even as we gather here. But here is hopeful news as well. We have the ability to solve this crisis and avoid the worst, though not all, of its consequences. If we have boldly, decisively, and quickly, however, despite a rounding number of honorable exceptions, too many of the world's leaders are still best described in the words Winston Churchill applied to those who ignored Adolf Hitler's threat. They go on in strange paradox, decided only to be undecided. Resolved to the irresolute, abandoned for the solid for fluidity, all powerful to be impotent. So today, we dump another 700 million tons of global warming pollution into the thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet. As if it were an open source, and tomorrow we will dump slightly larger amounts with a cumulative concentration now trapping more and more heat from the sun. As a result, the Earth has a fever, and the fever is rising. The experts have told us it is not passing affliction that will heal by itself. We ask for a second opinion, and the third, and the fourth. And the consequent conclusion, restated with increasing alarm. It is something basic, it's wrong. We are that is wrong, and we must make it right. 7 years from now, in the past few months, it has been harder and harder to misinterpret the signs in the world is spinning out of kilter. Major cities in North and South America, Asia and Australia are nearly out of the water due to massive droughts and melting glaciers. Desperate farmers are losing their livelihoods. People in the frozen Arctic and low-lying Pacific islands are planning evacuations of places they have long called home. Unprecedentedly, wildfires have forced 500,000 people for their homes in one country and caused a national emergency that almost brought down the government in another. Climate refugees have migrated into areas already inhabited by people with different cultures. Conditions, increasingly the potential for conflict. Stronger storms in the Pacific and Atlantic have threatened whole cities. Millions have been displaced by massive flooding in South Asia, Mexico, and 18 countries in Africa. As temperature extremes have increased, tens of thousands have lost their lives. Why time? As temperature extremes have increased, tens of thousands have lost their lives. We are recklessly burning and clearing our forests and driving more and more species into extinction. The very web of life on which we are dependent is being ripped and frayed. 70 years later, my teacher, Roger Reville, and his colleague, Dave Killing, began to precisely document the increasing CO2 level day by day. But unlike most other forms of pollution, carbon dioxide is invisible, tasteless, and odorless, which has helped keep the truth about what it's doing to our climate out of sight and out of mind. Moreover, the catastrophe now threatening us in unprecedented, and we often confuse the unprecedented with the improbable. We also find it hard to imagine making the massive changes that are now necessarily to solve the crisis. And when large truths are generally inconvenient, whose societies can, at least for a time, ignore them. Yet, as George Orwell reminds us, sooner or later a false belief bumps up against solid reality, unusual on battlefield. In the years since the prize was first awarded, the entire relationship between mankind and the earth has been radically transformed, and still we have remained largely oblivious to the impact of cumulative actions. In this, without realizing it, we have begun to wage war on the earth itself. Now, we and the earth's climate are locked in a relationship familiar to a war planners. Mutually assured destruction. More than 2 decades ago, scientists calculated that nuclear war could throw so much debris and smoke into the air that it would block fire-giving sunlight for our atmosphere, causing a nuclear winter. Their eloquent warnings here in Oslo helped galvanize the world's resolve to halt the nuclear arms race. Now, scientists is warning us that if we do not quickly reduce the global warming pollution that is trapping so much of the heat our planet normally radiates back out the atmosphere, we are in danger of creating permanent carbon summer. As the American poet Robert Frost wrote, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Either he knows would suffice. But neither need we be our fate. It is time to make peace with the planet. We must quickly mobilize our civilization with the urgency and resolve that has previously been only when nations mobilize for war. For now, we still have the power to choose our fate, and the remaining question is only this: have we the will to act vigorously and in time, or we will remain imprisoned by the dangerous illusions? Mahatma Gandhi awakened the largest democracy on earth and forged the shared resolve with what he called Satyagraha, or future force. In every land, the truth, once known, has the power to set us free. Truth also the power to unite us and bridge the distance between me and we, creating the basis for common effort and shared responsibility. Here is an African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We need to go far quickly. Abandon the conceit that individual, isolated, private actions are the answer. They can and do help, but they will not take us far enough without collective action. At the same time, we must ensure that in mobilizing globally, we do not invite the establishment of ideological conformity and make new lockstep statism. That means adopting principles, values, laws, and treaties that release creativity and initiative at very level of society in multi-fold responses originating concurrently and spontaneously.